Have you ever stood in a place so calm, so silent, that it begins to feel unnatural? Asia Hospital in Patna was exactly that kind of place on March 22nd, 2025. A private hospital nestled near the archaeological heartbeat of Agamkuan, known for its history, not for horror. Yet on that day, silence screamed, and death walked the sterile halls unchallenged. Surabhi Raj, co-director of the hospital, was an emblem of calm authority. She managed operations while her husband, Rakesh Mehta, once a lowly hospital cleaner turned millionaire administrator, expanded their empire. Together they had built a kingdom of white coats and quiet corridors. But that day, the queen would fall, and the kingdom would crumble. At precisely 3:15 p.m., a training session for junior staff was underway just outside Surabhi's second-floor office. 14 trainees, fresh-faced and half-interested, whispered and chuckled. The trainers, visitors from Medanta Hospital, had just left. Laughter echoed through the hallway, oblivious to the storm about to erupt. One curious staff member, sensing their boss might be disturbed by the noise, tiptoed to Surabhi's office to check if she was inside. The door was slightly ajar. The intern peeked in. Then they froze. Blood. A red halo beneath the director's chair. A motionless figure collapsed behind her desk. A scream shattered the hallway's levity. Chaos erupted. Doctors rushed in, dragging her limp body to the emergency ward, yet her pulse was fading fast. Moments later, a CT scan revealed the horrifying truth. 3 bullets embedded in her chest. Word reached Rakesh, who had allegedly left for a business meeting. He arrived breathless, distraught, or so he appeared. But by the time Surabhi reached IIM's hospital, it was too late. She was pronounced dead, and the story that began as a medical emergency had just become a murder mystery. Meanwhile, a cleaner named Tetri Devi returned to the hospital, summoned to clean up after Madam's sudden illness. Unaware of what had occurred, she mopped away blood and even disposed of shell casings, unwittingly destroying evidence. No one stopped her. No one questioned it. And that was no accident. The police were informed only an hour later. By the time they arrived, the crime scene had been meticulously wiped clean, sanitized like a patient before surgery. The blood was gone. The clues erased. The officers were furious. What should have been a sealed investigation site now looked like just another administrative office. But there were whispers about a strange gray cap found under the table, about shattered mobile phones, about shell casings the cleaner had tossed aside, and about cameras. Security cameras that hadn't worked for weeks, all except one. That solitary functioning camera captured a figure entering the building from the rear entrance and exiting without the cap. Surabhi was cremated the next day. Her family wept. Her children, aged 3 and 5, would never know the comfort of their mother's arms again. But questions had just begun to bloom like a tumor. Who could walk into a hospital in broad daylight and shoot a director without being seen? Why was the crime scene scrubbed before police arrived? And more importantly, was this murder an inside job? Before we explore what the investigators discovered next, ask yourself, what if the people closest to you, those who sleep under your roof, are the ones orchestrating your downfall? How well do you truly know the person you share your life with? Could the smile across the breakfast table hide something sinister, perhaps even a motive to kill? After Surabhi Raj's murder, what remained was not only a lifeless body, but a web of lies, fraud, and betrayal that would shame even the darkest corners of human nature. As Patna's police began digging, layers of carefully buried truths began to surface. The initial question, who had access to the second floor during the time of the murder, led to a grim realization. This wasn't the work of an outsider. The crime was executed within a tight window of 15 minutes during a training session planned. Unusually, why had that session, normally scheduled days in advance, been arranged suddenly with mandatory attendance? Why had Masood Alam, the HR head, sent multiple reminders demanding full presence? Investigators discovered that Masood had been unusually active days prior. Surveillance footage, phone records, even cafeteria logs revealed an unnatural pattern. He had been circling Surabhi's floor more frequently. Still, suspicion alone was not enough. Not until the post-mortem report delivered its brutal verdict. 6 bullet wounds, bruises indicating resistance, and signs of blunt trauma. This wasn't a hasty murder. It was an execution. Meanwhile, digital forensics examined what little was recovered from the crime scene. Surabhi's mobile phone, retrieved from her husband Rakesh's possession, had a bullet hole through it. Curious, wasn't it? Why would a man grieving his wife's murder secretly hide her damaged phone unless he feared what it contained? Then came the tapes, or rather, the missing ones. The hospital's internal DVR system, meant to store footage from over 20 surveillance cameras, had mysteriously failed. Only the front gate's camera had recorded anything useful. All others? Under maintenance, claimed Masood. But forensic software detected deliberate formatting just 24 hours before the incident. The timing was no coincidence. Rakesh Mehta, the grieving husband, suddenly became the prime suspect. Not only had he been absent during the crucial 3:15 to 3:30 p.m. window, but his alibi was unverifiable. His phone pinged near the hospital, not away at some phantom meeting. And what of the cap found in the chamber? Investigators linked it to CCTV footage from a nearby store, showing a man entering with the same cap and leaving bareheaded. The question became not if Rakesh had orchestrated the murder, but why. That's when Surabhi's files, the ones she was reviewing in her final hour, revealed the true rot within the institution. She had uncovered a financial siphoning operation, roughly 2 crore rupees diverted from hospital funds. Money that, tracing bank trails, led to Siliguri, where Alka Singh's brother worked in another hospital. Coincidence? Number Alka Singh, once a nurse. Now the OTP and HR head, promoted overnight with no formal announcement. Investigators now turned to her. What qualified her for that position? Nothing, except Rakesh. Behind Surabhi's back, Rakesh and Alka had built more than just an illicit affair. They had constructed a hidden empire, siphoning funds, hiding transactions, falsifying claims. Surabhi, unaware for months, had recently grown suspicious. Staff reported she had started asking questions, had begun examining files herself. That, detectives believed, signed her death warrant. The timeline became terrifyingly clear. The training session was a distraction, deliberately placed. The DVRs were wiped in advance. Masood coordinated staff movement. Alka tracked Surabhi's schedule. Rakesh, knowing her routine, ensured she would be alone during the 15-minute window. And inside that silence, with no witnesses, she was executed. But they made mistakes. The phone records, the cap, the rushed cleaning, the bloodied mobile phone. Police arrested all 5 within 72 hours. Rakesh Mehta, Alka Singh, Masood Alam, Anil Kumar, and Rakesh's brother Ramesh. Each denied involvement, but under interrogation, contradictions multiplied. Rakesh especially changed his statement 3 times. At one point, he even suggested Surabhi might have committed suicide, an absurd claim, given the ballistic evidence. It was Rakesh's cold detachment that finally convinced investigators they had found their monster. When shown images of his wife's bullet-riddled body, he didn't weep. He didn't even flinch. He only asked, "Did she say anything before dying?" The weight of his betrayal wasn't just personal. It was surgical, methodical. He had used love as a scalpel, his family as anesthesia, and his ambition as poison. And now, as the courtroom date approached, the truth had begun to spread beyond hospital walls. Yet something was missing. Surabhi's notes, handwritten private, mentioned a deal gone wrong. A file she had hidden from the staff, possibly documenting the 2 crore rupee embezzlement in detail. That file was never found. The police had suspects. They had a motive. They had a confession. But not the whole truth. And that brings us to a single, chilling possibility. What if someone else, someone beyond the 5 arrested, was still pulling the strings? They thought the nightmare was over. 5 suspects behind bars, confessions recorded, and the hospital empire in ruins. Justice, it seemed, had finally awakened. But justice, like the truth, is never linear. And in this case, what the world believed to be the end was merely a well-crafted decoy. As the trial of Rakesh Mehta and his alleged accomplices approached, police investigators received an anonymous tip. A former hospital accountant who had vanished 2 weeks before the murder sent a letter. No signature, no fingerprints. In it, he detailed a chilling revelation. The financial fraud unearthed by Surabhi was not limited to embezzlement. It was tied to a much darker scheme, one that involved medical insurance rackets, ghost patients, illegal organ transplants, and shadow donors. This wasn't a murder born of jealousy or marital betrayal alone. It was a silencing. The accountant claimed Surabhi had uncovered a black fund worth over 10 crore rupees, a secret account funneling money through Siliguri and Nepal. The hospital had become a front, a mask, for something far more sinister. Alka Singh's brother wasn't just a hospital technician. He was the logistics handler for off-record procedures. Patients whose names never appeared in official records, bodies buried, identities erased. The implications were too vast to ignore. A secret task force was formed. They revisited Asia Hospital's closed wings, sealed archives, and renovation floors. What they found horrified even the most hardened officers. Documents with forged signatures, blood samples with mismatched IDs, and a hidden locker room with medicine stockpiles unfit for human use. One cabinet held medical files of over 300 patients, none of whom officially existed. This wasn't just about Surabhi anymore. And yet, the prosecution focused narrowly on the murder. Rakesh, in an act of desperation, tried to shift blame onto Masood and Alka. His face, once polished for television interviews and political networking, now twisted under pressure. He began to crack. He spoke of voices, of nightmares. "She still visits me," he whispered during a psychiatric evaluation. "She knew too much. I had no choice." But the investigators weren't done. They traced financial records to a shell company registered in Kolkata, which led to a courier business in Guwahati, which finally pointed to a silent investor, a politician with known ties to several healthcare chains. When confronted, the politician denied everything. Yet his phone records placed him in direct contact with Rakesh weeks before the murder. Surveillance footage even showed his car parked near the hospital late at night, 3 days before Surabhi's death. Still, no action was taken. Political pressure grew. Evidence was lost. The file Surabhi supposedly hid, still missing, and then came the second death. Masood Alam, the HR head, was found hanging in his prison cell, officially ruled a suicide, but the bruising on his wrists, the broken fingernails, the missing surveillance footage from the night before, all told a different story. Fear spread among the accused. Ramesh and Anil refused to speak further. Alka asked for solitary confinement. And Rakesh? He began writing letters, dozens of them, each claiming he was a pawn, that someone else had used him, manipulated him, threatened his family. The court case collapsed under conflicting testimonies, technical failures, missing evidence. It ended not with a verdict, but a mistrial. Public outrage erupted. Protests surrounded the courthouse. But the law, like a blade dulled by bureaucracy, failed to cut through. Surabhi's parents took custody of the children. The hospital was permanently shut down. Rakesh and Alka were kept in separate prisons under high surveillance. But questions remained. What about the 10 crore rupee black fund? What happened to the mysterious accountant who exposed the second layer of the conspiracy? Why did Masood really die? And who erased the final trace of Surabhi's handwritten notes? You see, the surface had been peeled back. But what lay beneath was not a single conspiracy. It was a network, a hydra, and one of its heads was still breathing. A month after the mistrial, an investigative journalist who covered the case was found unconscious in her apartment. No signs of forced entry. Her notes? Stolen. Her laptop? Wiped clean. The case was declared dormant, but the whispers never stopped. Some say Surabhi's ghost still lingers in the broken corridors of the hospital's ruins, waiting, not for justice, but for truth. For someone to piece together the last fragments of the story she died trying to expose. And now, I leave you with this. What if the true mastermind never entered the hospital at all? What if they simply watched and waited, while others did their bidding? Who do you think that shadow might be? Tell us in the comments, because sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones you never see.